$64,420 a year. That is the median observed annual spending for a retired household with between $1 million and $3 million of total retirement wealth, when guaranteed income makes up a middle share of that wealth. Not $200,000, not private jet money, about $5,368 a month. And the Federal Reserve data explains why that number matters. The most recent public survey of consumer finances available when I checked was the 2022 survey. It found that 18% of American households had a net worth above $1 million. Only 3.7% had at least $5 million. Do the division, and nearly 4 out of 5 millionaire households sit between $1 million and $5 million. So more than 75% of millionaires belong to the ordinary millionaire group, not the yacht and vineyard group your brain pictures when it hears the word wealthy. There is an important honesty clause here. No credible survey says exactly 75% of millionaires spend exactly $64,420. Household data does not work with that kind of precision. P. Morgan and longitudinal research based on the Health and Retirement Study. That intersection points to a spending center around $60,000 to $80,000 a year for the lower end of the millionaire range. The number rises as wealth moves toward $3 million, $4 million, and $5 million. But spending rises far more slowly than wealth. That contradiction is the interesting part. The math says wealthy retirees could spend more. Their behavior says many of them do not want to. P. Morgan divided households with $1 million to $3 million of total retirement wealth, according to how much of that wealth came from guaranteed income, such as Social Security and pensions. Households with the smallest guaranteed income share had median observed spending of $49,650. The middle group spent $64,420. The group with the largest guaranteed income share spent $71,710. Same broad wealth range. A difference of more than $22,000 in annual spending. That means the number in your brokerage statement is not the only thing controlling your retirement lifestyle. The form in which your wealth arrives can change whether your brain gives you permission to use it. I built a digital book called The Exit Code around this exact gap between having enough and feeling able to leave. It connects retirement math to the spending psychology behind the 4% trap, and you can find it through the link in the description. Before we move deeper into the psychology, we need to define millionaire correctly, because this word has been ruined by television. The Survey of Consumer Finances measures family net worth. That includes financial accounts, retirement accounts, business interests, vehicles, real estate, and the primary home, minus debts. It does not mean the household has $1 million sitting in a checking account waiting for a waiter to bring another bottle of champagne. Picture a household with a paid-off home worth $500,000, $600,000 across retirement accounts, and $50,000 in cash and taxable investments. That household has a net worth of $1,150,000. It is a millionaire household. It also cannot withdraw 4% of $1,150,000 from a portfolio, because almost half the wealth is the building where the owners sleep. Unless they sell, borrow against it, or downsize, the home produces no monthly retirement income. This distinction creates the opening level of the spending ladder. At $40,000 a year, you are often looking at a household with a paid-off or inexpensive home, relatively controlled fixed expenses, and Social Security covering much of the budget. $40,000 is also the amount a $1 million investable portfolio produces under the familiar 4% calculation before taxes and before adding Social Security. But many net worth millionaires do not have a $1 million portfolio. Their total wealth may include $400,000 of home equity, a vehicle, personal property, and retirement accounts that are partly taxable. Their lifestyle is therefore closer to an ordinary middle-class retirement than the word millionaire suggests. This is the level where housing decides almost everything. $40,000 with a paid-off home can support a very different life from $40,000 with $24,000 going to annual rent. A spreadsheet sees identical income. The retiree experiences two separate economic realities. Move towards $60,000 and the lifestyle gains breathing room. There is space for normal housing costs, food, transportation, Medicare premiums, home maintenance, gifts, modest travel, and an unpleasant appliance that decides to die at exactly the wrong moment. This is also where Social Security and portfolio income begin to work together rather than forcing the portfolio to carry the entire household. Suppose a retired couple spends $60,000 and receives $40,000 in combined Social Security. Their portfolio must provide $20,000 before considering taxes. On a $1 million investable portfolio, that is a 2% withdrawal rate. The account can fluctuate without every restaurant meal feeling like an attack on future survival. Yet plenty of households in this position continue behaving as if the full $60,000 has to come from investments. Their mental ledger does not credit Social Security in the same way. They look at the portfolio, imagine every withdrawal as a permanent wound, and forget that the spending gap is far smaller than the lifestyle number, P. Morgan's observed transaction data for households with $1 million to $3 million of total retirement wealth and a moderate share of guaranteed income. That amount is not poverty, wearing an expensive watch. It is approximately $5,368 a month of actual spending. With controlled housing costs, it can support a comfortable retirement in many parts of the United States. It also explains why comparing retirement spending with your final salary creates unnecessary panic. A household earning $120,000 while working may be sending $20,000 into retirement accounts. It is paying payroll taxes, commuting costs, work clothing, convenience meals, and expenses caused by having less control over time. It may also be supporting children who will not remain on the household budget forever, despite occasional evidence that they intend to. When work ends, gross income does not need to be replaced dollar for dollar, because gross income was never the lifestyle. Part of it was the machinery required to earn, tax, and save the money. An $80,000 retirement lifestyle can therefore resemble a much larger working salary. That does not make $80,000 inexpensive. It means income and consumption are different measurements. If you like this kind of document-based comparison rather than retirement folklore, subscribe. There is a lot more boring data worth rescuing from badly designed reports. Between $60,000 and $80,000, the ordinary millionaire can fund a comfortable life without needing wealth to perform a circus trick every year. This is the deepest part of the ladder, because the expenses that define an affluent but non-luxury lifestyle do not scale with net worth. You do not eat 4 dinners because your portfolio doubled. Your electricity does not become twice as satisfying at $3 million. A reliable car drives the same distance whether the owner has $1 million or $5 million. Housing, food, transportation, insurance, and healthcare establish a large fixed base. Once that base is covered, additional spending goes into discretionary categories such as travel, gifts, hobbies, services, and upgrades. Those categories can rise, but time and energy become the limiting assets. A 70-year-old with $4 million may be able to afford 12 major trips a year. That does not create the desire to spend most of the year recovering from airports. The next section of the ladder begins around $100,000. At that level, the budget can support more frequent travel, greater generosity, a more expensive location, continuing mortgage costs, higher taxes, and fewer compromises around convenience. P. Morgan's data for households with $3 million to $5 million of total retirement wealth shows median observed annual spending of $101,210, when guaranteed income makes up a smaller share. The middle group spent $116,120. The highest guaranteed income group spent $136,720. Notice what happened. Total retirement wealth moved from the 1 to 3 million range into the 3 to 5 million range, yet median spending did not double in proportion. The lower wealth group's middle figure was $64,420. The higher group's middle figure was $116,120. Wealth may have risen dramatically, while spending rose by less than the balance sheet difference would suggest. This is the compression effect. Additional wealth buys resilience before it buys lifestyle. A second million can reduce the danger of a bad market sequence, support future healthcare, create room for gifts, and absorb inflation. None of those benefits requires the household to order a more expensive breakfast. At $120,000 a year, a retiree is spending $10,000 a month. That is a substantial lifestyle, but it still does not look like the fictional millionaire your brain produces. It may look like a nice home, 2 maintained vehicles, several trips, good food, help with grandchildren, generous giving, and the ability to pay for problems without turning them into family emergencies. The visible lifestyle can remain understated because wealth often appears as the absence of financial drama. At $150,000, portfolio requirements become harder to ignore. If the full amount came from investments, a 4% calculation points to $3,750,000 of investable assets. Social Security or a pension can reduce the portfolio burden, but taxes, housing, and healthcare still matter. At $200,000, the same calculation points to $5 million of investable assets when the portfolio carries the entire load. A household may reach that spending level with less if it has strong guaranteed income, rental income, or business cash flow. But $200,000 is no longer the default lifestyle of an ordinary millionaire. It belongs much closer to the upper end of the distribution. This is why a $1 million household and a $10 million household should never be placed in the same behavioral bucket. The label is technically correct and financially useless. The Federal Reserve data makes another distortion visible. In 2022, the mean family net worth exceeded $1 million, while the median was only $192,900. The average American family was technically a millionaire only because a small number of enormous fortunes pulled the average upward. No typical household had suddenly found a seven-figure statement under the sofa. The same distortion appears when people discuss millionaire spending. A household burning through $400,000 a year is memorable. A household spending $68,000 while driving an 8-year-old vehicle does not become a magazine profile. The dramatic example gets repeated until your brain mistakes visibility for frequency. The actual data gives us a quieter picture. Most millionaires are older households that accumulated assets over decades. Many own their homes. Their wealth is spread across retirement accounts, taxable investments, real estate, and business interests. Their habits were built during the years when spending less was the mechanism that created the wealth. Retirement does not automatically uninstall those habits, and retirement spending does not remain fixed. Research by David Blanchett and Warren Cormier used data from the Rand Health and Retirement Study to follow household spending through the first decade of retirement. After 10 years, 75% of households were spending less in inflation-adjusted terms. The median total decline was 23%, which works out to approximately 2% a year. That does not mean every retiree should deliberately cut spending by 23%. It means the common planning assumption of raising the same spending number with inflation every year does not describe how most households behaved. Rand researchers, looking at spending after age 65, found real annual spending declines of about 1.7% for single households and 2.4% for couples. Housing, transportation, food, travel, and entertainment generally fell as people aged. Healthcare became a larger share, but increases there did not automatically offset every decline elsewhere. A separate study from the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College added an important qualification. Wealthy and healthy households had almost flat consumption, declining around 0.3% a year. That suggests part of the broader decline comes from financial and health constraints. But it also creates an uncomfortable question. If well-funded retirees have the resources to maintain spending, why do so many still leave large amounts unused? This was never mainly a story about what millionaires can afford. It is a story about what their brains classify as safe. The same habits that built the wealth can make the wealth emotionally unavailable. During accumulation, every dollar has a job. It increases the account balance, it earns returns, it protects against unemployment, it shortens the distance to retirement. Saving creates a visible reward because the number moves upward. Spending reverses that feedback loop, the account falls, and your brain interprets the movement as failure, even when the withdrawal was planned. You spent 30 years training yourself to feel good when the portfolio increased and nervous when it decreased. Then retirement arrives, and a calculator expects you to reverse the emotional meaning of both directions on a Tuesday morning. That is not a math transition. It is an identity transition. Researchers studying the retirement consumption gap found that retirees with median wealth left about 8% of potential consumption unused. Among wealthier retirees, the estimated gap reached as high as 53%. Even after the researchers reserved 40% of beginning financial assets for spending risks and bequests, the wealthiest group still showed a potential consumption gap as high as 47%. They were not declining one extra dessert. They were potentially using around half of the consumption their resources could support under the study's assumptions. Some restraint is rational. Nobody knows their date of death. Long-term care can be expensive. Markets can deliver poor returns early in retirement. A surviving spouse may need the money. Children may receive an inheritance. Plenty of people gain more utility from security than from luxury. But rational protection and automatic fear are not the same thing. P. Morgan guaranteed income figures expose the difference. Households in the $1 to $3 million retirement wealth range, with 20 to 40% of that wealth represented by guaranteed income, spent a median $49,650. When guaranteed income represented 40 to 60%, spending rose to $64,420. At 60 to 80%, spending reached $71,710. Total retirement wealth remained in the same broad range. Spending rose by about 44% from the lowest guaranteed income group to the highest. The money did not become more valuable. It became easier to interpret. A pension payment arriving every month feels like income. Social Security feels renewable because another payment is scheduled. A portfolio withdrawal feels like selling part of the machine. Economically, all three can fund the same grocery bill. Psychologically, they are not interchangeable. A retiree may happily spend $3,000 of pension income while refusing to sell $3,000 of investments. The account statement has converted fungible money into sacred principle. That mental accounting is one reason dividend income feels safer than selling shares, even though a dividend reduces the value of the company by roughly the amount distributed. The label creates permission. The total return math does not change, but behavior does. I have spent more than 10 years running my own business around accountants and fiscal lawyers, and I have multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars invested. The more financial documents I read, the more obvious it becomes that many expensive money problems are brain problems, wearing spreadsheets as camouflage. The spreadsheet may show a withdrawal rate below 3%. The owner sees an account balance dropping by $30,000 and imagines eating canned beans at age 92. The result is predictable. The finish line moves. At $1 million, you tell yourself $1,500,000 would feel secure. At $1,500,000, $2 million becomes the responsible number. When the account reaches $2 million, the market looks expensive, healthcare looks uncertain, and another year of salary appears harmless. Another year is never free. Suppose you have $1,500,000 invested, and your desired retirement spending is $70,000. Combined Social Security will eventually provide $42,000. Once those benefits begin, the portfolio gap is $28,000, equal to a withdrawal rate of about 1.87%. You may need more before Social Security starts. Taxes and healthcare can change the calculation. But if the long-term gap is below 2% and you are still working because 4% feels dangerous, the rule intended to protect retirement has become a reason to postpone it. Now, imagine working another year grows the portfolio to $1,600,000. 4% of the extra $100,000 adds $4,000 of theoretical annual spending capacity. If your desired lifestyle has not changed, that extra capacity does not solve a problem. It adds padding to padding. Then the new balance becomes the amount you are afraid to lose. This is the villain in a lot of retirement plans. More is never enough, because more does not answer an emotional question. A larger number cannot create certainty about an uncertain lifespan. The financial planning industry often makes this worse through a model that assumes your retirement spending begins at one fixed amount, rises with inflation every year, and continues unchanged for 3 decades. The model then tests whether the portfolio survives. That is useful as a stress test. It is terrible as a description of human life. The 4% rule was not designed to tell you how much enjoyment you are permitted to buy. It asks whether a fixed, inflation-adjusted withdrawal survived difficult historical sequences over a particular period. It treats a 95% success rate and dying with several $1 million as the same successful outcome. Your life does not. A rigid withdrawal rule ignores the fact that discretionary spending can move. Travel can be delayed after a market crash. Gifts can increase after strong returns. Housing may change. Social Security can begin later. Required minimum distributions eventually force money out of tax-deferred accounts. Spending often falls with age, even when wealth remains available. The rule creates a binary world in which either your plan survives or you are ruined. Real retirement has a control panel. Knowing these numbers and building a system around them are two very different things. I built a digital book called The Exit Code as an analysis of 50 years of retirement data distilled into a mathematical framework for exiting the rat race. The parts most relevant here are the 4% trap and the dynamic withdrawal method that replaces a frozen spending rule with boundaries that respond to markets, plus the unretirement paradox, which explains why people can reach financial independence and still struggle after work disappears. It is 8 chapters of research built to turn maybe someday into a date and a usable spending system, not another motivational speech about manifesting abundance. You can get it for less than a dinner out through the link in the description. Every extra year of unnecessary waiting is paid for with time, and time does not compound in your account. The better framework begins with a spending floor, a portfolio gap, and a flexible margin. They are connected, so changing one alters the others. Your spending floor is the cost of keeping the household running without optional upgrades. Housing, utilities, food, insurance, baseline healthcare, transportation, and taxes belong here. This is not a punishment budget. It is the amount below which life would feel unstable. Guaranteed income then covers part of that floor. Social Security, pensions, and other dependable cash flow reduce the amount your portfolio must produce in weak markets. The remaining portfolio gap determines the real withdrawal pressure. If your spending floor is $60,000 and guaranteed income provides $40,000, the floor places only a $20,000 demand on the portfolio. On $1 million, that is 2%. Everything above the floor becomes flexible margin. Travel, large gifts, home projects, upgraded vehicles, and other discretionary spending can rise when returns are strong and pause when the market is weak. That structure gives your brain 2 forms of permission. The floor is protected by income and a conservative portfolio demand. The margin is allowed to move without threatening the household. Consider a couple with $1,800,000 invested, $45,000 in expected Social Security, and desired spending of $80,000. Their long-term portfolio gap is $35,000, or about 1.94%. If they want another $20,000 for travel during the early active years, total spending rises to $100,000, and the portfolio demand becomes $55,000. That is about 3.06%. The travel money does not need to rise with inflation until both spouses reach age 95. It belongs to a period when they have the energy and desire to use it. A static model may treat the $100,000 lifestyle as permanent and demand $2,500,000 under a 4% calculation. The dynamic view recognizes that $80,000 is the durable lifestyle and $20,000 is temporary flexible spending. That difference can represent several additional years of work. The model also helps with market declines. If the portfolio falls 20% early in retirement, the household does not need to cut groceries or cancel insurance. It can reduce the flexible margin while guaranteed income and the lower spending floor continue doing their jobs. When markets recover, discretionary spending can rise again. The portfolio is not an ATM dispensing a fixed inflation-adjusted amount, and it is not a museum exhibit that must never be touched. Your actual retirement number therefore starts with spending, not salary and not net worth. Look at what left your household accounts over the previous 12 months. Remove retirement contributions and costs that disappear with employment. Adjust for expenses that will end, continue, or begin. Healthcare before Medicare deserves its own line because early retirees face a different cost structure from someone retiring at 65. Then separate investable assets from home equity. A $2 million net worth with $1,200,000 invested supports a different plan from a $2 million portfolio plus a home. Guaranteed income reduces the amount investments must supply. That portfolio demand divided by investable assets gives you a more useful number than comparing your total net worth with an arbitrary target. Suppose your household earns $150,000 before retirement. You save $30,000, spend money commuting and maintaining work routines, and pay taxes tied to wages. Your actual household lifestyle may cost $85,000 rather than $150,000. If $45,000 of future spending is covered by Social Security, the the portfolio eventually needs to provide $40,000. At a 3% withdrawal rate, that gap points to approximately $1,333,000 of investable assets. At 4%, it points to $1 million. That is a meaningful range to investigate. I earn $150,000, so I need to replace 80% forever is not analysis. It is a slogan with an expensive consequence. The range must also account for timing. Retiring before Social Security creates a bridge period when investments carry more of the budget. Delaying benefits can increase future guaranteed income, but requires resources now. Taxes can make a $40,000 withdrawal from a traditional account different from $40,000 taken partly from a Roth account or taxable assets. Those details do not destroy the framework. They explain why your answer is a range rather than one sacred number. The final question is whether your spending target reflects a life you want or a life you think wealthy people are expected to display. The data says ordinary millionaires are not spending in proportion to their balance sheets. Many are living on $60,000, $70,000, or $80,000 because that amount already covers what they value. Others could spend more but remain trapped in accumulation mode. There is nothing morally superior about either high spending or low spending. The failure occurs when the behavior is accidental. If $80,000 buys the home, relationships, travel, time, and security you care about, spending $200,000 would not make you better at retirement. If your plan safely supports $120,000 and you deny yourself meaningful experiences because the account must always rise, frugality has stopped serving you. Money is supposed to transfer effort from one period of your life into freedom in another. Saving forever completes only the first half of that transaction. Subscribe if you want more research translated into decisions you can use. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. Your finish line is not the day more finally feels like enough, because more never volunteers to be enough. When the math covers the life you actually want, continuing to work is no longer free prudence. It is a purchase, and the price is time. Finish line is not the day more finally feels like enough, because more never volunteers to be enough. When the math covers the life you actually want, continuing to work is no longer free prudence. It is a purchase, and the price is time.